So good morning, everybody. I have something interesting going on with the music and I can't. And now I'm feeding back. So we were actually live streaming on Telegram this morning, and it's not quite working the way that I was hoping. And so now we're going to have to leave Telegram. So I'm sorry for those of you. We tried, and maybe somebody who's more tech understanding than I will be able to figure that out. But nobody wants two of me talking at the same time. It's enough for just one of us. So, but just think about it. It's live and there's always something goofy happening. So you just tune in to find out what goofy happens in the morning when we start recording. So there was your one for Friday morning. So we'll try this again. Good morning. Hope your Friday is going well. It looks like, as a matter of fact, that next week is going to be quite the interesting weather week in Oklahoma as we finally transition to, I think it's our first fake fall, or maybe it's our second fake fall. I'm not really sure, but the temperatures are going to go down and we'll have some rain, which will be nice. So in the meantime, let's have our guest. Let's talk about our guest this morning, who is Teresa Mull. She was my editor at one point when we were both working for the Heartland, and she has written a book that I think everybody needs to know about. And I'm so grateful that she was able to come on with me today and talk to us about her book, because this is something that everybody needs to go out and get this book. It is phenomenal. And so I'm going to welcome you this morning. Teresa, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Jenny. It's nice to be here.
I am so happy to have you because you have written a book. Oops, you can tell I've read the book, Woke Proof Your Life. And I love the kind of secondary title. It is a handbook on escaping modern political madness and shielding yourself and your family by living a more self-sufficient, fulfilling life. And I would have to say that you struck gold with this.
Well, thank you. I had, as you know, amazing people helping me. I interview many brilliant people in the book, including you. And so I certainly couldn't have done it without you and the many other very wise and wonderful people who I quote in the book.
Well, and I really appreciate that. But you had a number, including our friend Joy Pullman, who you interviewed also as well for the education section. So I want to just jump right in because you're hard in an hour here. So let's jump right in. So tell me, one of the funniest things and that I really love the most when I jumped into the book, and I'm going to tell everybody the two things that I love the most about the book, and this is why I recommend it just highly. It is a very easy to read book. It's super easy to read. She has plenty of, it's not just, it's not like radio instruction. She's given all of these people and done interviews with all of these people that talk about these various things. And you get to see perspectives through their eyes as well as hers. But even better, and probably the best thing about the whole book is at the end of every chapter, there are steps to take that will help you just to live a better life. So you could literally run down the steps in each chapter and go, oh my gosh, I can do this one. I can do, well, that one may be tougher. But the point is, their steps are there. And that's what I love the most about this book. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I wanted to make it really approachable and easy for people. Everyone seems to be so busy these days, and I wanted to make it just simple to read. You can pick it up, read a couple pages here and there at a time, just flip to a random section of the book if you want to. If something isn't as maybe relevant to you, you could skip around here and there. So yeah, thank you for saying that. That's what I wanted to bring across. So I'm glad that I accomplished that.
But you did. And, I would imagine that you're the same as I am, in the same position where people come to you and they say, yes, but I don't know what to do about any of this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now we get to go, voila.
Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel intimidated and overwhelmed, and they don't know where to start. It seems like wokeness is everywhere. Every time you turn around, there's some new woke madness rearing its ugly head. But I hope that people will realize that it's not as bad as the media makes it out to be, certainly as bad as social media would have us believe, and that it's very much a winnable war.
So tell us what woke is, because you have an actual definition that you got from Google. That was quite interesting.
Well, my definition of woke is that it is a radical socio-political ideology that's characterized by the manipulation of noble goals for the control and destruction of society. It's a form of evil, and it's essentially political correctness, quote unquote, on steroids. So there's nothing really new about wokeness. It just has some updated terminology. The goals are all the same. The way that it works and the people who are manipulating our terminology and our language, there's nothing new about that. But wokeness in the book, I use a quote, as you referenced, from Google, which it says that you're basically alert to injustice, specifically racial injustice, which is how wokeness kind of sprouted its legs and started to take hold. We saw a lot of wokeness come about during the George Floyd protests during, I think it was 2020, 2021. So relatively recently, wokeness started to gain steam. But the sample sentence Google had been using, and you can still find it all over the internet. Whenever I wrote the book, this is a sample sentence they had. It was, we need to stay angry and stay woke. So what I point out in the book is that stay angry comes first. So, why is that? It seems as though the people who are pushing wokeness are dissatisfied in their own lives. They're not very happy people. I don't know if you've ever met someone who was woke and also pleasant to be around, or seemed as if they were very content in their lives. So they're angry first, and then they're looking for reasons to justify their anger, which is why they invented wokeness and all sorts of vague terms: diversity, equity, inclusion, Black Lives Matter movement, LGBTIA plus, etc., that we see coming about.
You said in here, and there was particularly on this one page, and I probably won't be able to find it now, but you said the definition of the devil is, basically to split people apart, is to, cause, and this is basically what this is doing, is ripping people apart. It's not bringing people together. We're not saying, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. We're saying scream at your neighbor because they have more, whatever it is than you do.
Mhm.
And it doesn't help anybody get together then at that point. So to contrast with woke, what is normal?
I use the word normal as an acronym in the book, and that is non-woke, ordinary, rational, moral American leaders. So I never hear the word normal anymore unless it is again being manipulated by the woke and progressives, who say the new normal, which is their way of tricking us into thinking that all the radical agendas that they're pushing should be normal. But you think of what normal actually is, what their true definition is. And for example, if you go to the doctor and you have a normal temperature, that is what is healthy and good for your body. So what is normal in society is what is healthy and good for our culture and for our communities. So just getting back to, growing up when I was a kid, we didn't argue about whether a biological male should be playing field hockey on the girls' team, or whether a man can chest feed, or whether children should be having story hour read to them by a drag queen. Like all these things, I'm just like, our world is so crazy and chaotic. Can we get back to normalcy? Can we get back to sanity? And that was a big inspiration for the book. I was just tired. I realized one day I was arguing or debating in my head, or just outraged by some news report. I think it was about biological male participating in the women's team, and I was getting upset about it. And I was like, why am I wasting my time on this? These people don't have any interest in the truth. Like, it's very obvious that it's unfair and unjust and dangerous to have a man on the women's team. So why are we debating this? Can we get back to a time when this was normal and that nobody would even have thought of this,
Well, you have an overarching theme in the book, and it's funny because I've known you for, at least certainly as my editor and a friend for, quite some time. And I think that I thought, oh my gosh, as I was reading this book, we're the same person.
It's funny how much normal people have in common.
I just, everything you read, I was like, oh my gosh. As a matter of fact, there was a point where I was like, I think I'm kind of jealous that you wrote this first, because I could have read this book. It really
collaborated. Yeah.
It was really great. And the overarching, and that's probably a third thing I like about the book. I came away from the book not outraged that, whoa, wokeness, look. I wasn't outraged. I was like, hey, you know what? There's some hope here. I can do some stuff, and I think I get so tired. I don't even watch stuff on the television anymore because most of it's just nonsense, and then you get mad about it. And I want to watch something like Sound of Music. I want there to be singing and people happy. And the greatest thing about your book was I finished it and went, okay, I feel much better now, because you feel like you're not alone. You feel like not only are you not alone, but there are other people out there who are doing something about it. And now I have some actual things that I can do. So I can set about to do something. So I have some hope, so that was the other thing that you did. And what I got as the overarching kind of premise of the whole book was we have to confirm God and humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I track in the book the rise of wokeness and how it continues to spread and take over and implement its poisonous, rotten fruits in our world. The more we get away from God and the more we lose our faith in the Judeo-Christian values that founded our country and that made it so great. So in the 1950s, I think it was something like 98% of people professed that they believed in God, and about 90% of people were Christian. And now every year that Gallup has been doing this values and beliefs poll for decades now, and every year it's going down. And then people are empty, they're lost, they're purposeless, they don't have that sense of service to one another and the values that many religions, but Christianity and specifically teach that you are to treat your neighbor as yourself and to see one another as somebody that you are to serve. And who is your neighbor? That is everyone you encounter. And now the woke message is, who is your neighbor? Well, what it's not, can I serve this person? How can I help them? How can I help them get to heaven and love God more? It's what can I get from that person? How did they discriminate against me? What, are they a bigot? Are they racist? Are they sexist? Are they a homophobe? All these things. It's really how our attitude has shifted in this country, and how we're looking at one another and how we're treating one another. And what wokeness is all about is about exploiting people, looking at their exterior, their skin color, their sex, what they identify as, like how weird can you be, the opposite of normal, and what's good and healthy, but how like kind of absurd and extreme you can be. So yeah, it's kind of like, the game Jenga. You take God out of there and the whole thing starts to fall apart. And so I really encourage people to seek God. If you are a God-fearing person and you have a relationship with Christ and you belong to a church community, to be outspoken. We are called to preach from the housetops and not to hide our light under a bushel basket. It says that in scripture. So until we get back to Christ and our Christian values, then we're never going to defeat wokeness. But that's the number one thing we have to do.
So two other things. Another thing that I liked about the book. We'll just keep going and I'll just keep popping up things that I liked about the book. You infused these quotes from different people. I mean, all the way from Mother Teresa to, I can't remember some of them right off the top of my head, but just some really great quotes that went with what you were talking about, obviously, but it's just so helpful, I think, in continuity to be able to say, well, this is not the first society that has struggled with this kind of thing, and I think even just couching things historically makes people who are rational, part normal, rational, have a better overview of where they are. And so therefore they're not quite so hopeless. So I loved that about it. And then the other thing was, you have an entire chapter in here for people who are seeking God. It gives them kind of instructions as to how to find God. Mm-hmm. And I loved that. I've never seen a book where that was infused, to such a level, and you did a great job with that. So, for all of you who are seekers, who are going to go buy the book, because I know you will, it has a great chapter in there that just helps you understand how to either come closer to God or actually find him.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That was very important to me. I am a person of faith, and I was very blessed to grow up in a faithful family. We always went to church. I got to go to a Catholic school as a child. And so faith has always been part of my life. And I've, my relationship with God kind of ebbs and flows. It's never as close as I'd like to be, but, I pray continually, and I am blessed to have that faith. But it occurred to me that so many people you encounter, maybe they've never been exposed to God. Maybe they grew up in an atheistic or agnostic family, or they were just never exposed to the ideas and the beliefs that you and I share. And that is such a sad, empty world. I can't imagine what that would be like. But as we see from these polls consistently, our faith is going down, down, down. And I think a lot of children grow up nowadays without having any exposure to any sort of faith and belief. And so I encourage people, if you are normal, you are anti-woke, you are traditional, you have these beautiful gifts of understanding and reason and logic that the woke are constantly trying to fight against, that if you see someone espousing some sort of woke rhetoric, not to write them off just automatically, because there's a good chance that unless they're one of the powerful woke puppet masters who are just spreading wokeness for their own gain, they don't even believe wokeness, they don't believe anything. A lot of people are easily taken in by wokeness because it is very artfully crafted. It is sold very well. It's packaged up in these nice, vague, sound good and feel good terms. And a lot of people are taken in by that. So you have to realize that whenever you encounter wokeness in the world and you encounter woke people, many of them are lost and they're seeking meaning and they're seeking purpose, and they see wokeness as something that will give them that validation. And of course, as we point out in the book, that is not, it's false. It's a lie. Everything about wokeness is evil, but have compassion on these people and try to present the truth to them, and see if they're open to the truth and they're open to reason and they're open to the beauty that you offer them in the alternative, which is faith in God and a relationship with Him.
Well, you have kind of toward the end of the book, you have several chapters. One of them, I put on my note, talking to people. You had talked about the one thing that you found when you went back to live in your hometown, because you said, originally you were like, this is a little town. I'm out of here, Jack. There's better stuff. And then, you realize, hey, I've lived in the big town and, I think I want to go back there. And I was caught up. So, because I live in a small town, but it's so tiny, we don't have the small town feel because it's just too tiny and kind of we're isolated. But you talked about how you reached out to other people and how and I think, and I'm just talking all over myself because I have so many ideas about the book because it was so great. But I think we all want the easy button. We're humans and we just want to sit that on the desk and go, I'm done. Everything's all better. Mm-hmm. And you point out in the book that it's a conscious choice. And not only is it a conscious choice, but conscious choices require action. You're not going to this isn't all going to just flow over the top of you, or, you press the easy button and you get it. You have to go out and find it. And I loved the chapter where you talked about all of the ways that once you went back to your little town, that you started getting involved in your community. And just say a couple of those, and then we'll back up again to the other chapters. But I just want people to understand that we're not changing each other by yelling at each other on the interwebs. The one way we are going to change each other, though, is in person. So just give us a couple of ideas about what you did when you moved back to your hometown.
Yeah, so much of wokeness is about alienating people and isolating them and pitting them against each other. And as you pointed out, it's much easier to do that whenever you're just sitting at home on your phone or on X or whatever, Instagram, sending nasty messages to people that you've never met and that you will never meet. And you just walk around with this angry attitude about your fellow human. But whenever you get out and you actually start talking to people, you realize that you have a lot more in common with that person than not still in this American society, unless you're somewhere super radical like downtown San Francisco or something. But there's also a section on how to move. So, but yeah, I moved back to my hometown. It was about 6 years ago now. And I thought, I'm going to stay here for like a month or two and figure out. I was working remotely at the time. And I thought, I'll kind of get my bearings and then move somewhere bigger and more exciting and more important. And of course, that was 6 years ago. And I note that, you're not going to move to a small town and suddenly it's going to be like a Hallmark movie where everybody instantly, and you're best friends with everyone and it's peaceful and perfect and there's no crime or anything like that. Of course, small towns have their challenges just like anywhere, but I think it is much easier to have a woke proof existence somewhere that's smaller. We know that rural places tend to be much less progressive and liberal, and you do have the opportunity to interact with your neighbors on a daily basis. You run into someone everywhere, at the post office, at the grocery store, at the local restaurants, at church, all these places. And it's a really comforting feeling to have friends everywhere you turn. So what I did I guess I wasn't really seeking a community at first because I did think I was too good for this place. It was beneath me. I was too ambitious. But I joined a local sportsman's club. I grew up shooting. This is a very rural place. I think we have the most number of NRA members here in Pennsylvania after Texas. So it's a gun-friendly place. It's just part of the culture. And I always was intrigued by shotguns and shooting trap. And there's a Tuesday night trap league that I joined. And everyone there was just so friendly and welcoming and helpful and generous, and just had really neat personal stories that all just kind of created a beautiful tapestry in my life. I became friends with these people, and then through that network I would meet more people and they'd invite me to events, and from there it just really grew. And I started going to the local cafe, and I write in the book, it's kind of like the college cafeteria of town. You walk in there and basically everyone, and you check in on them. How are you doing? How was your knee surgery? How's your granddaughter doing? Things like that. It's really friendly, and you get to really know people and to care about them, and then to take care of them, and in turn they take care of you. I call it social pollination. It's kind of like a little bee spreading honey around to a flower. You're spreading your honey and your talents and your prayers and your joy to the people that you encounter, and they're doing the same for you. And I think that's how life was intended to be lived, and it's a beautiful, beautiful way of existing, and it's a way better than canceling one another and censoring one another and bullying one another and giving each other labels, as the woke is intent on doing.
Well, and it's interesting too. One of the quotes that was in your book that I found so interesting, I can't remember what chapter it is now, but one of your interviewees was saying something like, look, we're not going to get political answers here. This isn't a political issue. And I thought, that's so interesting. And it kind of bleeds over into what you said. I'm a Republican, for what all that means, certainly today. But we're having a schism in the Republican Party because part of the Republicans don't agree with what the other Republicans say. And these people like these people that don't like these people. And so these people are mad at these people. And it's like, but beyond that, the point I was trying to make, even people that you believe that you have something in common with, you're not going to have everything in common with. Mm-hmm. So the idea that you can't get to know people that have different ideas and that you're not going to have some commonalities with is kind of stupid, really. And mm-hmm. I think that's how woke wins. They win by convincing us that we're so different from each other that we can't possibly find any place that we can come into agreement and then, form the basis of a relationship. And there are certain things I'm not going to compromise on, because as a Christian, I'm just simply not. But I'm not going to allow those to infect myself or my household. But I'm still not going to tell people, that they're going to hell, or that, I don't want to be your friend because you're, fill in the blank. And I think if we would stop with all the hyperbole, I think we could get to the point, and I think that's the point you really make in the book too, is if we just stop all the hyperbole and start thinking about what we really mean and what's really important, then a lot of this nonsense is going to stop. And there's not a political solution to that, because you can't write a law that says be nice to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about limiting political influence in our lives and socio-political influence. It's all tied up in the woke movement. They're trying to force us to accept this radical ideology that they're spreading more and more through legislation and through our tax dollars and things like that. And what woke proofing your life, the goal is to make it so that you don't have to participate in that anymore. It doesn't mean, again, that you write off people you disagree with or you go and hide from the woke world at all. It just means that you're building up your own self and your own family and your own community, so that wokeness is less effective. It has less of an effect on you, and you're more independent from it, and it's a more you have an alternative lifestyle that you can live, so you don't have to take part in it. And I think as more people kind of jump the woke ship or jump the modern easy way of living and get on the woke proof ship, then you'll find that wokeness is kind of empty of its members, because it is very dissatisfying. It is destructive. You see how much mental illness and their mental health crisis has come about and this at the same time, the same rate as wokeness, and I don't think that's coincidental. So yeah, for years we were able to have our differences. Democrats and Republicans would disagree on things. You disagree on matters within your own family, but we still had that core belief and the core traditions and mindset that was keeping us civil and keeping us kind of agree to disagree. It used to be rude to talk about politics and religion in public, and now it's like a sin of omission if you don't at every turn proclaim whether you have a rainbow flag or you're for Donald Trump or you're vaccinated or you're masked or whatever it is. We never these didn't used to be issues. We could just talk about politics now and then, keep it civil, try to find solutions, and then live our lives. But that doesn't seem to be an option with the woke. They want you to be talking about wokeness at every single turn of your life. And people are really getting sick of it. Not just traditional minded conservative Americans, but even people on the left.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I completely agree. There's one point in your book, you did have a whole chapter on education, and yes, we did have a lovely interview about homeschooling. But you talk about homeschooling, and then you talked about charter schools, and then you talked about private schools, and you talked about one of the ladies that you talked to whose kids are in public school, and she actually gave a list of things to do, that if you can't get out of public school, here are the things that you must do in order to be able to navigate your children through public school. And I thought that was really interesting. And one of the things, so there's that thing, little gem in your book. There was a part in it's in the chapter, What's at Stake? And you had several things in there about, there was just warning people about, look, if we don't change our way of thinking here are some things that are going to happen. And one of the things, I just actually want to read this little section, because as you well know, we're all about education here. And you talked to Rob Chevelle, who is the CEO of the data privacy firm Delete Me. And he said this, according to your book, this was his quote. Over time, the amount of data collected is becoming more enormous and far-reaching than any busy parent can imagine. And it's happening earlier and earlier. This generation of children is growing up with the internet, and that means that companies, especially social media companies, have a data set over time that is incredible. They can actually use artificial intelligence algorithms to analyze how your particular child is developing, potentially better than you can as a parent. This is scary to me, because companies run predictive behavior over many, many millions of profiles. A parent could never do that. And tech companies can predict effectively things you may not be comfortable with, and things you would never be able to predict yourself. What might your child's behavior look like over the next 5 years? Not just what they'll be buying, but how successful will they be? What things will they take up? What kinds of friends will they have? And how will those events, as they move through time, predict their outcomes as a young adult, and on and on? The ability for big tech to know more than a parent knows about their own child leads to all kinds of bad scenarios. And then, of course, Rob goes into ways that you can prevent your child from being on social media, and if they are, how to protect them from doing that. Don't you see, and that this I kind of felt was another overarching theme of your book. The more I talk about it, the more I'm finding here. Which was social media is more of a detriment, really, than it is any kind of a blessing. I mean, am I wrong there?
No, I agree with you. Obviously,
Uh-oh, did we glitch out?
Oh, can you hear me?
Teresa, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, no. Okay, are we back?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Are we back? Hello? Oh my
I can hear
goodness,
you.
we're having internet trauma today.
Oh, no. I'll just keep talking. Let me know if you can hear me.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I back?
I can hear you.
Hello? Yeah,
Hey.
okay. All right. Well,
Can you hear me?
I have no idea what happened there. We just went bye-bye for a little bit. So at what point did you hear me, and did I cut off?
I heard you the whole time, and I heard the end of your question from Rob Chevelle, so I can go from there.
Okay, so hit me up there on that.
Yeah, I think social media is a net negative personally. I go through all of the detrimental effects it has on people, especially children, how excessive social media use leads to increased anxiety, loneliness, body image issues, just really all sorts of terrible mental health problems. And in kids, it also, and adults, it messes with your cognitive functions. We see our collective attention spans going down and down. It leads to eye strain, poor posture, wrinkles, which I think is just, you know. So, I mean, that's screen time in general, not just social media, of course, but yeah, I mean, there are positives to it, of course, like anything, you can find the silver linings, and that is, of course, that it can unite you to like-minded people. It can foster certain virtues, if it leads you more to prayer, or it teaches you something of value, of course, teaches you maybe to be more self-sufficient, helps you learn through, I encourage adults to educate themselves too in the classical method. And of course, you can find social media. You can use social media to find communities that way. So it's not all bad, but I think if you had to choose one or the other, do I have social media or don't I would encourage people not to, or at least to use it maybe as a starting point, a jumping off point to find people, and then go meet them in real life, or give them a phone call, or interact with them more directly, rather than this kind of weird in between screen world. Yeah, and certainly whenever it comes to children, I would say no social media. They don't understand what these social media algorithms and these the companies that run social media are doing to them. They don't have the wherewithal to sort of to be aware of what is being sent their way. And as a parent, it is very difficult to keep track of everything your child sees. And I wouldn't want to risk it on social media. There's so much pornography, there's woke messaging rhetoric everywhere you turn, and they have the ability to cancel and censor, of course, any sort of opinion that disagrees with wokeness. So I would just say it's a very dangerous place, and that I wouldn't let my child have social media. That said, if you trust your child and maybe he's a little bit more mature or older, Rob gives several tips to manage your child's use of social media, to make sure that the email your child uses to sign up for any sort of platform is your email, or that you are a part of that account, that you have access to it so you can see what accounts and posts your child sees at all times, and to use a different email address and it's sort of a different identity every time you sign up for something. That
Yeah,
way,
that was the interesting. I had never thought
Mhm.
about that. Get a
Yeah,
different email for every social media account.
right. Yeah, that way it's much more difficult for them to compile one sort of master list or master, you know, overarching profile on you. If you're a different person every time, it'll be much more difficult for them to track you. And of course, to limit your own social media use, set a timer if you have to. It's very easy to get lost in the scrolling and the
Ah,
scrolling, and next thing you know, like 2 hours have gone by. And certainly for kids, it's so addictive for all of us, but especially for children. Really set those parameters and say, okay, yes, you can use Instagram, but only for 15 minutes after you do your homework or something. As a parent, you are more equipped to talk about that than I am, but
no, but I mean, that's exactly right. And that's what we did with our kids. I mean, they didn't get cell phones until they were in high school. And even then they had to turn their phones in at night before they went to bed. So they couldn't have phones during the evening hours. And, we limited their time on social, all those kinds of things. And so far everybody has not been arrested or, and they're earning some kind of a paycheck. So I guess that's a win, right?
right.
Um, the other thing that I wanted to just mention, because we're running out of time and I want to make sure that we get to a couple more things. You had a whole section on colleges and you even listed some non-woke colleges. So I thought that was great. Oh, you had a whole chapter on how to get away from woke corporations.
Yeah.
And that was the best, because that's another thing that I get into, especially with my friends. And my friends are like-minded. And one of them said something the other day about, well, I ordered this from Amazon, and everybody went, and the answer always is, well, where am I going to get it then? And during the time that Amazon was basically deplatforming people because they were what were we, seditionists for going to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. I went to Amazon, and all things that I bought on Amazon, I went and found the direct supplier.
Mhm.
And I just started buying from the direct supplier and told Amazon to go take a flying leap out my second story window. I mean, I just did it. And it's super easy to do. And you just do business. And usually those businesses that are platformed on Amazon, because this is the other thing. Oh, but I get free shipping if I do Amazon. Okay, well, did you know that most of those companies that you deal with are going to also offer free shipping because they don't want to lose business to Amazon? So, there really is no excuse for this. And that whole section in there, I mean, that was just awesome. How did you even think about to stick that whole thing in there?
I guess it's something that I have struggled with personally. Trying to, I'm not sure if I put this in the book or not, but I have been telling some people that another part of my inspiration for writing this book, in addition to just trying to find a solution for all the anger and the angst and the unpleasantness that seems to be taking over our society, is that I bought my favorite shampoo and I looked down and there was a rainbow flag on it, and it was kind of like the last straw. I was like, is there
You did
nothing
say
I
that in the
can
book,
buy?
I think.
Yeah, okay. I was like, is there
Yeah.
nothing I can buy that is not supporting some sort of radical left wing, you know, goal? And I was just so sick of it. And I was like, has to be an alternative. There have to be alternatives for people like me. And so that was my inspiration for that section of the book. And I provide a list of woke corporations, and it's a big long list, and it can be intimidating, but I also have a list of non-woke and neutral companies that people should be purchasing from. And I talk about the Public Square app, which has really taken off since I wrote the book. It's now being traded on the publicly on the stock market, and that is an app that you can put in your phone that directs you to non-woke companies and businesses in your area, so it can guide you, to spend your money so that it aligns with your values. And then I encourage people also just to think about what you're purchasing. We live in this abundant, wealthy society where you can get pretty much anything with like 2 clicks of your thumb on your phone, and it's delivered, the next day or whatever. But if the things that you're getting and you're filling your life with are funding something that's also destroying your society, do you really need that thing? And in a lot of cases, you'll find that you can simplify your life. And, or as you pointed out, you can find an alternative company, and it can also be kind of enjoyable. It's like a little expedition, like a hunting expedition to go about finding an alternative brand that aligns with your values. And then I also encourage people to become more resourceful and creative. Maybe go to the local thrift store and find something there, or go to yard sales, things like that. Maybe repurpose something that you have sitting in your garage rather than going out and buying a new one every time and contributing to our throwaway society. So for every woke movement, there needs to be an equal and opposite reaction to it. As traditional-minded Americans who are concerned about the future of our country, and we want to regain that.
Dude, that's just physics.
Right, exactly. It's just physics. Battling wokeness is just physics. So, we need to be really conscientious consumers, and I have a guide for how to go about doing that, and ways that you can boycott that doesn't ruin your life. If you have to buy things, maybe you're a busy mom who relies on Amazon for her diapers, okay. But maybe there's something else that you don't need to buy from Amazon. Maybe you can start getting your batteries somewhere else or something like that. It's just, don't be tricked into the comfort and the convenience that an online world offers us too much.
But that's a good point though, too. You don't have to do everything all at once. This isn't just an all or nothing proposition here. I mean, and you mentioned that in the book, just like you did a second ago. And it's so important for people to understand, because they'll throw up their hands and go, I can't do all of that, because it seems really super daunting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a baby step at a time, right?
Do
it's
what
a baby
you
step
can.
at a time.
And maybe start with something small. Maybe look at something you're buying that has a rainbow flag on it, and you're like, you know what? I shouldn't be buying that. And then don't buy it. But then, once you get out of the habit of that, or you can afford maybe to go to the farmer's market once a week rather than going to Walmart for all of your groceries, maybe work that into your schedule and do that. And then, just one thing at a time as you can handle it. And that will make a difference, especially as millions of Americans start making that switch. Little steps at a time really add up.
So I'm going to flip, because I want to talk about my kind of favorite topic. So I'm going to flip through a couple of things. So one of the other chapters you had was on how to find unwoke healthcare, which is huge. So put that in your cap, and add that to the reason why you need to buy this book. Then another one was that was the real politics that I was talking about. I've got all these things, marked in the book. And we talked about talking to people, so I want to talk about, for the last few minutes that we have you on here, I wanted to talk about hobbies and farming. And it has been a real frustration to me, because I learned to cross stitch in the early 80s. My grandmother taught me, and I was never a knitter or anything like that, but I've done a lot of needlepoint stuff. Well, I kind of put my stuff aside for a little bit, just because I was so busy. We live on a farm, and so I was busy with the farm and busy with the kids, and didn't really have time. By the time I would sit down at night, I would fall asleep. There was no doing, needlepoint. But when I got back to it, I could hardly find any crafting supplies out there at all. And it just really, I think I got super sad about it, because I'm like, we don't even have hobbies anymore, because we use all this electronic crap to stick in for the time that we could be doing something better.
Yeah, it's so easy to, again, going back to kind of being lulled into that convenience and that click on Amazon to get everything automatically delivered to you. But there is so much richness to be found in, I think I use the term, becoming more human, really engaging our senses. Yeah, you can buy a pillow on wayfair.com and have it shipped to you in a couple of days or something, but you could also create that pillow yourself. Maybe you make it out of a blouse that you loved when you were a child and you're sentimental about, and you can't wear it anymore, but you don't want to give it away, and you want to have that in your life on a daily basis, and to be able to look at it and be sentimental about it. So you can do something like that and make the pillow yourself. Use your hands. Learn something new. Go to the local craft store if you're lucky enough to have one, and get to know the person who works there and who is an expert and can share her knowledge and her joy with you in the crafting world. And you just create so many layers of beauty in your life when you start doing things for yourself. And again, you don't have to do every single thing.
Right.
But I think that the more you do, the more you enjoy your life, and the more you, again, get closer to your creator, especially in gardening and farming, because you are engaged actively in creation and in helping to grow things. So I encourage people to get at least one hobby, one thing that, and it has the added benefit of lessening the monetary coercion that the woke are able to impose on you. Because if you don't have to buy that pillow from Amazon, then that's less money that you're giving to the big woke man. It makes your world more beautiful. It gives you more self-sufficiency, and it's fun too. It's something also that can bring you closer to your children. You learn to cross stitch from your grandmother, and you have those memories. And it's also a way to get away from wokeness in the first place. I have a big section in there about putting down your phone and stop spending so much time on your screens. And once you do that, you have all this free time. It's like, oh wow, yeah, I can learn to cross stitch, or I can learn to build something out of wood myself, or I can spend a lot more time in my garden because suddenly I have all this free time. So it's really a win-win-win. Hobbies.
Well, and you gave a couple examples in your book. The one that cracked me up was, I call it "Help, I Lost My Phone," where your mom took your cell phone accidentally and she was gone. You couldn't get it back, and you had to move this piece of furniture, and you couldn't find the guy who was supposed to help you. So you literally got in your car and drove all around town to try to find the guy. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is the coolest thing ever, because I think people honestly we're at the point that we're so connected to those dumb things today that people actually start feeling nervous or freaked out or something if they don't have it, around. Well, I don't even know how to do anything for myself. Well, you just went, you know what? I'll get in the car and I'll go figure out where he is, and I'll just talk to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
sounds
loved that.
absurd how simple it is, but it really is. People use their phones as such crutches, and we are forgetting how to read a map or to write things by hand, or our memories are slipping. And children, actually, I've talked to some school teachers who say that children are coming into preschool or kindergarten, first grade, without fine motor skills, because their hands are so used to using these devices that they're not learning gravity and physics and things, because they're not throwing a ball, they're just clicking on stuff. And they have this terrible posture. One teacher told me that her students don't have upper body strength because they're not sitting and they're not playing. They're just hunched over their devices all the time. And imagine if that's what it's doing to your physical body. Imagine what it's doing to your brain, and your soul, and all sorts of things. So yeah, we need to be using our phones much more, wisely, and
Much less, bottom line.
Exactly.
So the last part of your book, you really talk about cultivating community, and you have you had a huge section on a guy basically who has has a quarter of an acre basically, and gardens and then once he gardens, he takes this stuff and trades it with other people, and he has this whole community. He didn't have an entire farm. He just had it was just so great to read what you had written there, because it's so encouraging. It's not like, well, what you need to do now is you need to go out and get move and get a farm. It's nothing like that at all. It's stuff you can do in your own backyard. When we lived in town, we had 2 great big raised beds, and we gardened out of that. So it's not as though this isn't a doable thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want it to be very approachable for people who live in a big city, people who live out in the country, and everywhere in between. I also talked to a woman who she did her PhD thesis on basically self-sufficiency, where you provide at least 50% of your
Yeah.
food yourself. And she was able to find people who were doing that in Center City, Chicago, of all places. And they were able to do this through, having a little backyard chicken coop. And then they would trade eggs with farmers for produce, things like that. Or they'd have like a little thing of, honeybees, things like that. So it's not as daunting or as difficult as people might think. And I try to lay out the solution for people who are looking to do this in any sort of situation. And yeah, Brett Markham is his name. He wrote a book called Self-Sufficiency in a Quarter Acre. And he goes through exactly what to do to be able to grow your own food, all the benefits he has of that. And he really has, I would say, a woke-proof life before wokeness was even a thing. He's been living this way forever in New Hampshire. And he goes and helps his preacher from church butcher some meat chickens, and then in exchange he gives him produce, and then he gets chickens. And it's just a beautiful cycle of life that is the way we're supposed to be living, to help each other and to nurture each other and to find enjoyment out of this beautiful life, rather than just fighting with each other all the time and spending time mindlessly doom scrolling, as it's called.
Well, and that's doom scrolling. I think that's completely accurate. Well, we have lived on our place for almost 12 years. And it's funny because I have never been more, I think, attuned to nature or attuned to God, or, felt better about, things that I had control over than when we moved out. But it's weird because this year has just been a crazy year. We lost my mom in February, and that was just a complete, it was something that just happened. Wasn't expected at all. And we've lost 4 sheep this year and a turkey, and we've had a bobcat coming into the yard and grabbing chickens. And I mean, it's just been one thing after another after another. And I think, if our household didn't rest on top of God, and if I didn't have a relationship with God, I think you'd just throw up your hands and go, well, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I've had enough. I've had enough of this for this year. But I particularly, as a person, can relate to and back up virtually, everything that's in this book and confirm it, because it's worked for me. It's worked for the people that are around me that I know kind of function the same way. And I just feel like this book is the way you've written it and put it together is going to be a blessing for the people that choose to take the time to read it. So, I just am, again, I'm going to put the book up one more time. So, any closing sentiments before you run off to your appointment this morning?
Yes, I just want to really encourage people to know that you are not alone. If you feel like you are the crazy person in this woke world and everybody is going one way and you're standing firm, that you are far from alone. In fact, you are the canceled majority. You are not the minority. There are a few powerful, well-funded woke puppet masters who are spinning this narrative, and they're very loud because they own much of the social media as well as the mainstream media. But don't listen to the noise. Put down your phone, live your life. And once you start reaching out, and especially if you pray about it, you ask for God's guidance and support and help to woke-proof your life, you will find so many people who want the same thing that you do. And in writing this book, I was almost overwhelmed by the number of people I was able to find really quickly to help me come up with their first-person interviews to show people exactly how they did education, gardening, hobbies, all of these beautiful things that we have included in the book. It's easy to find people. Once you find one, they'll have someone else that they know. That person will know 3 people. Next thing you know, your network is just expanding, and you have all these beautiful souls willing and ready to help you. So just give it a shot, and don't be intimidated.
Wise words and lovely words. And again, the overarching, theme of the book, I believed, was humanity and God. And if we can't, touch both of those things, then we really are lost, because there's a lot more to life than what we see on the internet. So, Teresa, it's been lovely talking to you, and I've been so grateful that you came on to talk about your book, and I wish you tons of success with it. And I suggest to everybody to buy the book. It's just great. And I'll stick a link in the description of the video once we're finished, so that you can just go right to the link, because it's not on a bookseller, is it?
It's at sophiainstitutepress.com. It also is on Amazon
Okay.
and Barnes and Noble. So if you'd like to leave a review for the book and anywhere that you buy it, that would be very helpful too.
Awesome. But Sophia Institute Press?
Yes, that's the publisher. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So thanks a lot, Teresa. Great to talk to you. And I hope to talk to you again soon doing something else, because awesome. Take care.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Jenni.
All righty. Bye-bye. That was so much fun. The book is, I just can't say enough good things about that book. I really honestly cannot. It's so hopeful. And I know a lot of times, a lot of us, you wake up in the morning, and if you do get on your news feed at all, and you just see, whatever comes up, the first message, or the first thing I saw when I pulled up at newsok.com this morning, was an article about how Ryan Walters turned down an interview with a Black publisher, and then they made it out to be a racial thing, when in fact the Black publisher had been on social media saying just the most horrible things about Ryan Walters. And can you imagine that somebody wouldn't want to have an interview with somebody who's been on social media calling him a Nazi? So there you have that. And it can just be very frustrating when you see things like that. And if you just think, well, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to push back on this? And I think what Teresa said needs to be said more and more and over again. We're not the ones that are in the minority. We're not. We're in the majority. It's just the problem is the minority has all of the news outlets, has most of the corporations, has most of the large banks. And so it just kind of crowds out the rest of us, the normal man, if you will, and woman. And we just need to realize that we're not alone. We do have one another, and there are more of us than them. So I appreciate you tuning in today. I do hope that you'll go to our Patreon account, patreon.com, or under Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment, and visit our Patreon account. Our membership is just $8 to join. We have an upcoming WordPress build for $300. So you can always go to our rope.2.org website and go to the /donate page. And you'll find that we have numerous ways for you to donate if you would like to do that. And it just helps us to be able to bring information to you, like this wonderful book by Teresa Mull, and more information on education. Next week, we're going to have two Oklahoma major education players. Janice Danforth from Moms for Liberty will be on, and Riley Flack, who is happily and sadly one of the few men who are out there really sticking up for kids. And God bless him for that. And whether or not you believe the left's ridiculous mantra about Moms for Liberty or not, and I think I will insert this just because it's important to remember. There is an old maxim about getting flack when you're over the target. So anytime you see people going after people who look on one hand like they might be doing something that's good for a good majority of people, and yet they're getting flack, and they're being toasted on social media, and they're being called Nazis and all of these kinds of things. Remember to find out who's doing that name calling, because a lot of these people are over the target and the left just doesn't like it. And they'll do everything they can to make a big enough stink, knowing that a lot of people out there will just hear talking points and not do the research for themselves. So stick with us for next week. We'll be again live at 9 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday with two Oklahoma citizens who are really working hard to change the culture for the better. So we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. And like I said earlier, the weather is going to change. So hang in there. So at least for a week, we'll have some better weather. And we'll see you again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks for joining us.